It's not getting it.
Welcome everybody out there in podcast land. The Good Times with Good People Company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Good. Now that you've received your invitation, join us. Grab a cocktail, light a cigar, or whatever you like to smoke. Tell a friend, and welcome to the party. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let's introduce today's panel. We have got our returning champions, Chris O'Connor, co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media. Dave Elliott, we like to call him Big Dave. He is the owner of C&P Construction. Brian Massey, he's a market analyst for True Media and our resident brain mass. And of course, Ben Roberts, he is the Pendergast Club's resident bartender extraordinaire. And for those of you who listen to the podcast, that is where we record.
By the way, Ben is who destroys our brain masses, so just say it. Just say it.
Somebody's got to balance it out.
Yeah, somebody's got to balance it out. And at some point, I do believe we will also be joined by the anonymous female. So, let's jump right in. We've got quite a bit to chew on because there was quite a bit going on this week. And today's episode 43, executive orders, and I've got a huge crowd. So on today's show, first we're going to talk about our RIPs. First, Mary Tyler Moore, rest in peace to her, passed away at 80. I think we mentioned it on the last podcast, but I wasn't sure, so I want to make sure that we formally mentioned.
No, I don't think she had passed away by now.
Not Mary Tyler Moore, our next person.
Yordano
Ventura.
Let's talk about Mary Tyler Moore for 1 second.
Yeah.
You know, she was a rather groundbreaking woman. She was really rather interesting because she was kind of, cute and kind of Midwestern style character in this. But she was an independent woman.
Yes.
Who held her own against her boss at times. Who also was a pretty stylish dresser. You looked at a lot of the episodes of some clothes she had on, she was kind of sexy.
No, she was super hot. She
Yeah.
was not cute in my world. She was very hot.
And she played that off in an interesting way, I thought. Sex was portrayed by women, their sexuality was portrayed by women differently in those days. And how they displayed themselves and different things. But I thought she was a very interesting woman. I thought she played a very interesting part there. And then, of course, go on to Dick Van Dyke Show.
Well, I mean, if you think of it, the order was actually reversed. It was more, that's what I think is so fascinating. If you watch her on the Dick Van Dyke Show, where she's a stay-at-home mom and paroles and yada yada, and made this weird kind of the next evolution from Barbara Billingsley, who was the mom on David and all that, to 10 years later, the Mary Tyler Moore show, where she's this independent woman working, and you're right, standing up to Ed Asner and doing all that kind of stuff, and was really probably fairly influential in an icon of the era.
She's a producer too, so
absolutely.
That fits right into your genre.
It is. I mean, that's where the money is. So that's you. If you're not producing, you're not doing anything.
No, that's true. Well said.
Yes. Produce your own content out there in podcast land, except for podcasts. Just listen to this one. Next, Yordano Ventura. During the Royals' last few years run, and of course, eventually winning World Series, and Yordano had quite a bit to do with that. He was quite a young pitching phenom. I don't even think he had really hit his stride yet, but he was
close.
Yeah, he was pretty amazing on the mound, and of course, tragically lost his life. Car accident in the Dominican at the tender age of 25. Yeah, that was tough. And of course, the city, being Kansas City, where we are taping the show, has definitely been going through its emotions on it. We just had like literally immediately after he passed, that was just a spontaneous outpouring of gifts, and some of them actually pretty expensive memorabilia left at Kauffman Stadium, and we just had.
It's in my garage now, by the way.
Okay, all right.
And I don't live far from there. So you should sneak in about 3 o'clock.
There you go, 3 o'clock in the morning. There you go.
Well, by the way, podcast land, wear your seatbelts.
Yes.
Wear your
seatbelts.
It will save your life when you do something stupid.
You're 25. It's so hard not to do something stupid, and I think the saddest thing was, I think given 2 more years, he would have been.
Oh yeah.
Really hitting his stride at that point. He was so emotional, so volatile, and
Might be always say top 5 pitchers.
Absolutely.
I think he
definitely
had all that talent if he didn't blow his arm.
I mean, because he was always overthrowing, but he was always the first dude to plunk another guy when they went after.
He was old school that way.
He really was. He was.
I loved it.
He was.
That's the way baseball's supposed to be played. This ain't no sissy sport.
I agree. And
it's kind of like hockey. Every once in a while you got to duke it. Every once in a while you got to plunk it.
He's the teammate you want.
Yeah.
Like he was that guy.
Yeah.
Like I don't care if you put a dude on base, just hit him in the ribs as hard as you can. I mean, that dude could throw it 100 miles an hour.
Exactly.
Oh my God, he was crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just sad to see him go. That's way, way, way too early for a guy like that.
Yeah.
And then on the same day, there was another pitcher in the Dominican Republic within 30 minutes who also got killed.
What was his name?
Mendez.
Yeah, I think he was.
Jesus.
Was he 8 or 10 years older?
He's definitely older. I can't remember what the age gap was, but
they have some of the worst roads in the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's mountainous and it's curvy.
Curvy,
They don't have guardrails and
yeah.
I know Chris has been in third world countries, and I have too. We've been on these roads, usually driven by people that we probably maybe should not let driven.
When you're sitting next to a live chicken, you know that this is probably
a bad idea.
Paying attention to what's going on in the rear view mirror instead of watching the damn less of guardrail. It could create a problem. I'm just saying.
Yeah, really. And last on our list, I think only I and maybe maybe 2 other people on this panel will recognize what I'm about to say. World Star, the founder of World Star, Lee O'Dennett, he passed away at 43 of heart complications. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I'm going to say, like, World Star Hip Hop, the website was raking in money.
Oh yeah.
Does it? Do you think that's cocaine?
It's very possible.
I hear them die at that age, and then their genre and what their life is. I wouldn't be if cocaine or something like that comes into play a lot.
Whenever it's an African American who dies of heart stuff, the proportions of it are so much higher. It's just based on percentages of the population. Mm-hmm. That's not normally one that pops into my head. There's so much, and as you would know, like so much congestive heart failure. Like the life expectancy is shorter, and heart problems always seem to be disproportionately high.
It definitely it always gives me pause when like anybody in their 30s and 40s, especially in the African American community, the early 30s and 40s are passing away. I don't necessarily always think that it's a drug involved, but I wouldn't necessarily put it past anybody involved with World Star. I mean, if you've
come on, man, just get real.
No, I gotta get real.
When I have money.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like I would put
it in the honey.
If it were a different website,
was in the pocket.
If it was a different website, I would say absolutely not or absolutely so. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if somebody said, they found out later that it was something like that. Because World Star, as a general rule, and the reason why it was recognized by at least one person at the table is because people tended to do ridiculously dumb stuff and film it, and scream World Star because they knew that's where they were going to post this shit, and it was going to get clicks. So if you just ran up and just punched a random some bitch in the face, and you just World Star, and then it was probably going to get posted on World Star.
So
probably going to get a ton of clicks.
It's kind of like the redneck thing of here, hold my beer and watch this shit. It's somewhat similar to that, except more punkier. Well, mixed in with music videos and
it had real content.
Yeah, it had real content, but they definitely would post stuff other sites just wouldn't post too.
I mean, it was the hip hop equivalent of yelling out Baba Booey all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's getting picked up constantly.
Yeah, it's getting picked up constantly, and that's what it was. And to all three of those, and anybody else that has passed, rest in peace. If we
did, John Hurt.
Yes.
The actor.
Yeah. I was gonna bring you up. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about
I said, anybody know how old he was?
He
77.
played the Elephant Man. And probably his best role. Is that
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Could you imagine having to put that makeup on every day and deal with that, and
David
then understand the nuances of the man himself? That how he had to deal with it, and it was a freak show thing.
Well, and David Lynch is such a freak director to begin with. Like, that would be hard on its own. Like, there's nothing about that would be easy.
Right.
Yeah.
But Stephen Merrick. That was the guy's, the Elephant Man's real name. So
did a great job at that show.
Phenomenal job.
That was a difficult movie to watch, but it was very poignant in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was a brutal viewing. And it was masterful filmmaking.
Yes, it was. And you know something about that.
I do enjoy the art of the filmmaking that David Lynch
do
does.
too.
Sometimes I'm just like, you're just being weird now.
I can watch a movie that
sometimes
isn't always the best movie plot wise, but if the film is well made, it makes it a lot more enjoyable to get through.
Sure.
Where if it doesn't have a great plot and it's not well made, it's kind of like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an art form. There's a craft to it, so.
Yeah.
And David Lynch certainly falls on the art side of that. And you're right, I think John Hurt did a phenomenal job.
There was one more.
Go ahead.
It was the father of Pac-Man.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Wow.
I forgot about that, yeah.
What a legend.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I say, what was his name?
Messiah Nakamura?
No, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
You did a much better
I've
job
heard
of that pronunciation than.
I've heard it's like 3 or 4 different times through the news, different ways. I should say, through the news of how people pronounced it, but.
So what was his? I mean, obviously besides in vain, that did he get screwed out of the money?
I think he owned the company that. So I don't think he was.
That wasn't Atari that did that.
No, that was that Capcom? Or?
Yeah.
They did Pac-Man? Yeah, I think it was Capcom.
Really?
Yeah. I think he owned or was like a co-owner.
Because by the time it actually hit the Atari video game console, it was a piece of crap.
Yeah.
But the actual video,
stand-up
was
video,
awesome.
Yeah.
And this Pac-Man and all that, man, that was good stuff.
Absolutely.
They said it was the most played game, like by far.
As
billions
kid,
of times.
Oh my God, as a phenom, you still go to Up Down.
Yeah, I just finna say, I mean,
super popular.
Any place that still has an arcade.
Namco.
Namco, there you go.
That's right.
There you go.
That's
But that he did have the company. He didn't get like jacked out of the money or anything. You see about hold on to it?
Yeah, I think he made it all the way through.
He died pretty rich.
Mrs. Pac-Man, Junior Pac-Man.
Yep.
Pac-Man Fever.
Pac-Man Fever was great. Then they had the
Is
Saturday.
that like Saturday Night Fever?
They had a Saturday morning cartoon show.
Oh yeah.
With the Pac-Man family.
Yeah.
It got a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the licensing fees alone, I mean,
know.
God, it's iconic.
Yeesh.
Wow, God, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I heard it. Yeah, I did hear that yesterday.
Well, good for him, because way too often you see these guys who do something like that and just get absolutely robbed, of all the money, and so, good for him.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to jump right in with executive orders.
Oh, damn, this ought to be fun.
So everybody's got a handout of all of the executive orders that I could find that Trump has put into place as of right now. So I figure let's just start from the top of the list and get comments as we go down. It's probably.
I would just say as a general rule, looking at the list overall,
yes,
they are all basically borderline illegal and will be turned over. This is an abuse of what the executive order is meant to even be. And most of these are not even worth the tree that they killed to write them on, which makes me very sad for the tree.
I kept looking at the list and I kept thinking to myself, so basically, as president, you can go in and you can write an executive order for just about anything. But will Congress pay for any of it? And will they be overturned by the court?
They will be. I mean, Obama had more executive orders overturned than any other president in history.
Over 50%.
Trump will absolutely have the vast majority is overturned because they're just stupid and unconstitutional. And beyond that, he has no ability to pass. The president cannot pass a law. That is the way the Constitution is very specific about this. The laws all start in Congress, and then they get signed yes or no by the president, and that's it. And so this is just a scam to try to pass laws that you want to do, but you don't even actually have the legal authority to do it. I mean, it's just a bunch of nonsense.
I will. Before we get into the next section, which is actually some of the blowback from some of these things, let's go down the list.
Sounds good.
So, first, day one.
Do you want to do this one by one, or do you want to talk about each one, or do you just want to read the list?
Let me read the list.
Okay.
And then we'll go back and comment on whichever ones people have specific comments about.
Cool.
So, day one. Memorandum for the heads of executive departments and agencies. In order to halt any new federal regulations until they can be reviewed by the new administration. Actually rolling back regulations the Obama administration put in place will take time and will be a bureaucratic process.
That's a nightmare.
This is a near exact replica of executive orders that the past two presidents had their chiefs of staff issue at the beginning of their administrations, and it didn't work for either of them either. So.
Always good to follow a failed policy.
Yeah. Day three, regarding the Mexico City policy, reinstating a policy that, among other things, restricts U.S. funding to NGOs that provide abortions. Why that in particular is in the Mexico City policy, I'm not quite sure.
That's been going on for 30 years, though.
Yeah, but yeah. Also on day three, regarding withdrawal of the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations and agreement, which withdraws the U.S. from the massive trade deal that was negotiated under the Obama administration, and has, as we know, not yet been ratified by Congress. Also on day three, so day three was a busy day, regarding the hiring freeze, institutes a freeze on the hiring of new federal workers except the military. It contains wide exceptions for jobs necessary to meet national security or public safety responsibilities, which is a very broad definition. It also exempts military hiring, which accounts for a third of federal jobs.
I love that a busy day is 3 executive orders.
Yeah. There you go.
You're really working hard.
Yeah. Day 4. Construction of American pipelines. Says that new pipelines should be using U.S. produced materials. Regarding construction of the Keystone Pipeline, kickstarts a pipeline that the Obama administration had squashed construction regarding construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Prioritizes a controversial pipeline that was a subject of many protests in North Dakota. And also on day 4. So day 4 was busier than day 3. Streamlining, permitting, and reducing regulatory burdens for domestic manufacturing. Requests a plan to make the permitting process easier for U.S. manufacturers. Then we skip to day 9. Organization of the National Security Council and the Homeland Security Council. Elevates the president's chief strategist, Steve O'Bannon, to full membership of the National Security Council and downgrades the roles of the Director of National Intelligence and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who shall attend where issues pertaining to their responsibilities and expertise are to be discussed. And last but not least, on day 9, the plan to defeat the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And as you see, there's no verbiage with it because that's about as vague as that was. So, where do we want to jump in? Any day, any order. It doesn't matter.
I want to pick on something from day 4 right off the bat.
Okay.
The pipelines.
Okay.
As you know, I was in the fields for a long time and I understand the industry fairly well. I would challenge anybody in podcast land to go Google up and see how many pipelines are in the United States.
Yeah.
You will see lines crisscrossing all over the place. We have pipelines all over the United States.
Sure.
This is the safest way to transport fuels, crude, gas, anything you're thinking of. It's the safest way to do it. There are accidents, but they're few compared to what hauling on the rail or hauling by truck. There's a lot less chance to have an accident without vandalism through pipelines than it is in any other way. We can be energy dependent with oil right now. That's a fact.
Agreed, but that's not the problem. That's not the problem
And,
with the executive order.
well, we also can export and have a gross domestic product with oil right now.
We are the world's largest oil producer at the moment.
Bingo.
So, and that's not the problem.
But
That's not what
no,
anybody
but-
disagrees with.
Hang on. So my point being is this. The main problem with the pipelines with folks, in my opinion, is basically the environmentalists don't want it because it's still producing a fossil fuel. We've had a lot of problems with natural gas, which we should be running our whole trucking fleet on, because they even consider natural gas with its much lower emissions a fossil fuel. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be utilizing that fuel. I have no problem going to any type of green energy or renewable energy at all and insulating our houses and building. I'm all about that 100% green build, all this stuff, as long as it's sane and not off the chart stupid and costly. It has to be done in the same manner. But until that infrastructure is in place and is there and ready to go, we still have to use our main resource. And that's what these pipelines bring to us.
Okay, so I think there's two problems that are not addressed in this that are the main culprits of this executive order, which really pissed me off. One, you don't have the president has no authority to even do this. This is a massive overreach. This is literally. I mean, it's not legal to do this. But, and then beyond that, and while I agree with you about the pipelines, the fact that they're opening up national parks to run pipelines through protected lands and things like that, and reducing the restrictions on where you can place them and things on those lines, that's a massive problem to me. I don't want to go to the Grand Canyon with freaking pipelines running through it, or Yellowstone, or any of those places.
How do you think you can get one from one rim to the other? You got to crawl across the line.
This is a massive country, and we have a lot of land. And
I'm
saying,
I don't think
why
you see that.
I want to preserve very much the little bit of land that we have left, that we have taken great pains, and I'm a huge Theodore Roosevelt fan who started this program, of putting aside public lands that should not be jacked with for any reason under the sun. And I don't care, like Reagan tried this in the 80s under James Watt when he was Secretary of the Interior. They literally tried to start drilling in the Grand Canyon. I'm like, are you a freaking idiot? You know, you're going to take one of the most beautiful spots that took millions of years to be created and now start drilling for oil in there? Are you goddamn stupid? I just think it is... while I agree with you on pipelines, and I do agree that it is the safest way to transport crude oil, which we still need, you're absolutely right on that. It's just the way that it's being done that really bothers me.
Okay. Now, you do agree that the government probably owns way too much land out in our western
No, I
part of
think
the United
that's
States.
some of the most gorgeous land in the world, and it should be preserved. It needs to be protected.
You think that many acres, that much percentage of the land needs to be owned by the government?
How much of the country do you think is actually protected?
I'm talking once you get west of the Rockies.
No, I understand. I'm just saying there's, on a percentage basis, the United States government doesn't protect that much land. It's actually on a percentage basis. It's not that much.
I'm all about to protect the lands, but
I am absolutely a fan of protecting this environment, protecting the few spots we have left that are incredibly naturally beautiful, that we should not screw them up. And beyond that, he doesn't have the money to fund this. Like he's passing a stupid piece of paper that I could just write it down if I wanted to too. That doesn't make a law. You know, it's just nonsense. And he has no ability to enforce this. It's just a stupid waste of a piece of paper. And while I agree with a lot of the arguments, I do not want to see natural lands getting jacked up. And people make the argument all the time, like you just did. Well, I mean, sure, there's some accidents here and there, but blah, blah, blah. There's less doing this and that. Well, great. This is why we protect lands. So if there is an accident, it doesn't screw up Yellowstone. And it doesn't screw up the Grand Canyon.
Don't misunderstand me too much. You know how much of an outdoorsman I am.
I'm a huge advocate. Like, listen, I don't like pollution at all. Like, so my biggest thing is I don't know if global warming is real, not real. I have no idea. I'm not a scientist. And I think it's been studied way too short. In the 1960s, it was global freezing. Now it's global warming. I don't know. What I do know is I hate pollution, and I hate seeing accidents happen that destroy wildlife. And I don't want any risk at all, period, of that happening in protected lands.
But it's also difficult not to have the society and the mechanized society that we have, and the manufacturing society that we have, and not have some pollution afforded with it. I still think that as we head further down the road, there will be people that come up with the Teslas that work and these type of things. You're going to see more and more of it. We will eventually transfer away from the fossil fuels.
But why aren't we devoting the resources to
30,
that?
40 years from now, but I really like it to be done in the private sector because those are bright minds.
It's already being done in the private sector. It could use some funding. So if the government has to spend money on anything, why not encourage and spend the funding on that? Because everybody knows that's the future. And we are already, under Obama, with all the restrictions and everything, we are still right now the world's greatest energy producer, period. So why not leave those in place? But nobody's hurting right now. In fact, for forever, under Obama's administration, the world's wealthiest zip code was in North Dakota. You know, it was ridiculous. So that was the most expensive place to live.
Well, all I gotta say is I worked up there. Oh my God, that place is a government. Wait a second. I'm gonna back off North Dakota. North Dakota, if you ever spend any time up there, it has a lot of beauty. All right, it's a big open prairie. It's full of potholes, full of ducks, full of geese. You go up there and see that conservation areas that is done by Ducks Unlimited in particular.
Sure.
And the areas where they've kept the farmers from plowing over these areas and filling them in.
Yep.
They're stunning.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
To see the waterfowl flying around them.
See you.
But at the same time, I don't know. You still have to find your areas to produce energy. And you got to it has to be balanced. It's about balance.
You know where the world's wealthiest oil deposit actually is in western Kansas. So if they really wanted to start, there's nothing in western Kansas. It's a shithole. Just find the ways to get the oil out of there. You don't need to be running pipelines through national parks. And I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you off, right? I know you didn't want to say something.
No, I agree. You don't need. I don't want to run a pipeline through a national park.
But that's what the executive order allows. So
I think I think that companies should absolutely be, and the government should be putting money into research like that. But it's really expensive. So I get that side. It's it's very, very expensive. And the only ones doing it are ones that are saying, we want to take this risk because it is the future. Mm-hmm. Where, if they're looking at it from a business perspective, they can say, well, this might be a good benefit. We might be able to get it here in 20 or 30 years. That's a huge risk for a company to take. Or if they turn around and they say, hey, there's this pipeline we can do, and it's going to be a return on investment in the next 10 years or 5 years. And that's more of a guarantee than this other side. So they're going to go with it. So until there are more restrictions or things that are for certain not allowed, there's no incentive to actually shoot big for this research for a lot of companies.
I would ask Elon Musk if he would agree with that, and I think he would say no. I would ask General Motors if they agree with that. I would ask whoever the hell makes the Prius if they would agree with that. What I do feel like is, and I'll give you an historical example about this, the federal highway bill changed this country under Eisenhower. It changed it 1,000% because they invested in infrastructure and made it happen. So if you want clean energy and cars that run with no pollution and things along those lines, at some point you need a sweeping bill like the federal highway bill that actually encourages the infrastructure to be there. And allows for it. And I don't care whether that's through tax breaks or through federal funding or whatever the case may be, the federal government does have a role. And I'm a huge private sector guy, as you know. I do not like government involvement in anything. But at some point, this is what the government does. It allows for interstate commerce. And part of that, to me, is understanding what the future of interstate commerce will look like. And that is going to be renewable, clean energy and cars that don't emit pollutions and things along those lines. And I would love to see them be more active in getting us there.
I'm all about it as long as they keep it limited. Now, I like bean dishes, and if they eliminate bean dishes because it produces gas,
sure,
I'm going to have a real issue with this. So that's just going too far.
And let's be fair. Do you know what the world's biggest source of pollution is? It's
cows.
Red meat. Yeah.
It's cow shit. That is what kills the environment more than anything is methane gas from cows.
We should eat more steak. Eat steak; it's good for you. See, the vegans they're causing problems because they're not eating steaks.
This is me. I don't eat meat. I don't.
So we have to work on the vegans here. They need to have their responsibility to the environment.
I do like my lentil salads.
I'm done. My tirade's over.
Lentil salad.
I don't think we're that far apart on it. I just really want to make sure that the protected lands stay protected.
I don't disagree with you. Like I said, I've hiked the Appalachian Trail all the way from Connecticut all the way up to Mount Katahdin, and I've seen the beauty of God's world in so many different ways and in so many different places, traveling all over the world as you have.
Sure.
And when you see these things, and you also especially when you go places that are truly still pristine and truly wilderness, and it just takes your breath away at times.
But don't you feel like they're becoming fewer and fewer? Like, that's what makes me nervous. In the name of progress, that we are losing nature, and it's becoming fewer and fewer places that get the protection that has been needed for millions of years. You can't undo it once you screw it up. There's no way to turn the clock back and undo some of these things. And I would rather err on the side of caution and say, listen, why don't we make sure we're doing something right and safe with no possibility of harm, than say, well, let's just do this because it's easier and cheaper and there's a minimal risk of harm.
I have a little argument with you on that, though. You look at the Clean Air and Water Act of the early 1970s. Mm-hmm. And that worked.
Yeah.
That was one of the best ecological acts that was ever done, and it produced well. I mean, they cleaned up so many rivers You know, the Merrimack River out in New Hampshire was just a cesspool.
Well, take
now we got
Pittsburgh.
salmon running up it again.
My God, you would die if you got in the rivers of Pittsburgh.
You know, and among others, you know, the Cuyahoga and Cleveland caught on fire and all that stuff. So you look at all these things, and it is amazing what a good active government can do.
Agreed.
And it gets back to some of these, are they good acts of government?
This is sorry. I know we spent a lot of time on this one. It's a big one.
It is a big one. Any other executive orders that?
I really despise the ones where they prevent funds from going to places that provide abortion services, because as anybody who knows the situation on these things will tell you, it does two things. One, it prevents women from getting health care that they rightfully deserve, and not just abortions. Exactly.
But most of the clinics that actually do abortions provide health care across the gamut for women.
Very little of it's actually abortion related.
But if you cut fundings to these places because they offer abortions, now these women can't get their basic health care. And like Texas, what is it, like 2 places in the state now? Like,
I think Kansas is down to 1, and there's some states with none, and they just are passing them by just ridiculous restrictions like this.
Yeah.
And they estimate less than 5% of what Planned Parenthood does is advice on abortion or not, or providing those services. 95% of it is poor people going in to get basic health care, and to cut off that money. And there's already a rule in place that says federal money can't go for abortions.
Yeah, because you have to, because if that's a service you need, you actually have to pay for that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's everything else that women can get for free that is in
so
jeopardy.
that's already in place.
Yes.
Then it's only making it it's only harming.
So and now what happens every time they do this is that you see, and Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook, if you ever have read anything that she's ever done, and she's got a lot of great stuff. She has a whole group called, I think it's Lean In, that encourages women to get into the tech field and all this kind of stuff. She did a huge article the other day where every country and every time they've ever tried this and enacted this policy to withhold funds from places that provide abortions, saw a massive increase in illegal abortions and all kinds of women dying because of it. And
I agree with you on that, and I take a little bit more moderate view of things on this. I have, unless there's a health issue, they really should do this in the first 6 weeks. I have a real problem when it gets into late terms. I even talked to my sister about it. I've been trying to get a lot of women's opinions on different things. I'm not a woman, very obviously. And so I've been trying to ask a lot of different women what their thought was, and women that I know are more conservative, and women that I know more liberal. So I think the true consensus on this ought to be, okay, you made a mistake, you got pregnant, or you were raped, or you had incest, or something like that.
This is less than 1%.
I have trouble understanding why you can't make the decision in the first 6 weeks in that situation.
Rape and incest is less than 1% of the abortions in the United States.
Very small.
When people throw that out as an argument against, for or against abortion, I was like, listen, why don't we deal with the 99%?
Yeah, I don't get that either, because like I said, it's not a big deal, but I think a lot of women you have to put some responsibility on the woman to say, okay, I'm pregnant, I don't want to have this child, and I know it's an emotional decision. But you really, really, really need to think about doing this quickly.
I think a lot of women, they, depending upon if their cycles are pretty regular.
Right. That's the problem.
It may be, oh, wait a minute, like it hits them maybe in 6 weeks.
I was going to say 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, shoot, I haven't had my cycle. and then you go
You
get
still
checked
got
out.
your first term of 3
Well,
months.
yeah, well, now, yeah, your first trimester.
However you
definitely.
want to put it, but as soon as you know, I guess.
Well, yeah,
maybe I'm not stating myself as well as I should.
No, but I'm not I understand where you're going, and I'm not a fan of late term at all. But first trimester, I think most women within their first trimester know that they are, and whether or not this is something that they can or can't do.
Sure.
And then they do it then. The percentage of late trimester abortions is actually pretty small.
Most states prevent it. In fact, Kansas is one of the only ones that allowed it. And there's a clinic in Wichita where there's a doctor named Dr. Tiller who was shot to death in his church for performing late-term abortions.
Yep.
In fact, there used to be marches down there all the time. They'd block the streets, and pro-lifers, and I've got a bunch of family members who are massive pro-lifers because they're very, very Catholic. But actually, it was one of the only places in the country you could go for a third-term abortion without a reason. Now, most laws in most states say you can only get an abortion in the third trimester when you have a legitimate, when your life is at risk or there's a legitimate medical need.
I say, as we have been sitting here discussing women's issues, and Chris has been so eloquently defending them, we have finally been joined by the anonymous female. Hello, anonymous female.
Hi.
Did you have a long day?
It was a long day.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Good.
We were going down the list of executive orders and giving our thoughts and or objections to why they were even written in the first freaking place.
Okay.
So I'm not against federal. I think pulling federal funding for abortion is pretty ridiculous.
Well, there isn't any funding for abortion. It's for
places
some
that
places
provide.
who offer that service
Right.
that people pay for, but there's a wide array of basic health care that women absolutely need, and the ramifications to society for limiting those is just drastic in my opinion.
Period.
But the one thing that I have to say about it is that it should never, to a woman, be a form of birth control saying that every time I get pregnant I can go in.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I mean, I think it's very...
I don't think that's a large percentage of the women.
No.
But there are women that do this.
Yeah, but I
Put the
do...
baby out with the bathwater.
I'm not saying, I didn't say I was against,
Yeah.
I think pulling the funding is wrong.
Yeah.
Because I think you are throwing the baby out with the bathwater there. But what I'm trying to say is that there should be, and I'm sure there is, and I don't know, strong educational opportunities to talk to these women and saying, hey, this is not the way you want to have birth control.
But this is the thing that's
There needs to
crazy.
be counseling.
Well, I think that's the
They do.
crazy thing. The places that offer the abortions actually do a massive amount of counseling.
I think that's the most important
And,
thing that
And I think, I'm not completely sure, but I think Planned Parenthood actually will refer to the Catholic charities when they don't want to get an abortion.
they do. Yeah,
They do everything they can to try
Yeah.
to talk you out of it.
I have no doubt that they do. I think this is something put out by the evangelicals, and I was telling Rio that I've really asked a lot of different women's opinions of this in the last couple of weeks along the scale, and tried to gain a greater understanding of it for myself.
Yeah.
And that's important that we turn around and go talk to people to try to understand the situation a little bit better.
Well,
Because
I
it's a measure of extremes usually.
Yeah, well, you can ask 10 different women and get 10 different answers.
Yes, you can.
You know, and I mean, we've talked about that. You know, for myself, I can't imagine a situation where I would ever have an abortion. I truly cannot. But I've never been put into certain positions to have to think about
I
it.
only have one example that I know of in friends or family, and that happened to be my best friend's son, and his girlfriend got pregnant, and they were looking at abortion right off the bat. and they turned around and thought about it and decided to go to term and had this beautiful baby boy Carter, who's just almost like a grandson to me. You know, and I'm so happy that they made that decision. But it was a difficult decision because they didn't have anything, they're poor, they're living in Lynn's basement, you know, Chris's mother's basement, and they really had to go and realize they had a long road to hoe. But the cool thing is about it, by doing that, they've both risen themselves up and gained. I got a woman up and I got a man up and we got a son coming on the way, and this is what we're going to have to do to take care of it. And when that happens, I'm so proud of both of those kids because they really did the right thing, and I can't imagine. I've never had to deal with it, and if you haven't dealt with it, how do you really understand?
Yeah, I think that's the point, and I don't think that the public or the government should really have much of a say in it anyway. I mean, it's too hard to put yourself into a situation that, like, think about people that are, you know, I get the whole peaceful protest thing, and that's good. I mean, that's the way to do it. But to judge someone like a girl that's walking into one of these clinics that's about to go make the hardest decision and action in her life, potentially, it's not fair to judge them or to try to tell them what they should be doing. I mean,
it's not your conscience or your soul or however you want to look at it, and you have no idea why that person's walking into that place. You really don't.
Exactly.
And it's, you know, and I think that that's part of the issue that women have. You've got how many men in Congress versus how many women that are making these decisions for them.
This
and
is wrong. This argument I've always thought was just the largest fallacy in the world. Because until a woman gets pregnant on her own, then I'll easily abdicate my right as a person who's going through this right now and is going to have a kid on Thursday with a girl who I like very much, but we're not dating, we're not doing anything. She didn't get pregnant on her own, you know. So I'm like, I have no say at all. So,
but you should have, and that's
what I would also say.
But what do you always say though? You can't put your personal
I agree. So
situations into an argument.
What I was going to say was, at some point, I believe that there is a two-sided coin here. I do not think that the argument that guys have no say at all just because we're guys and we don't have to carry that baby to term and do all that stuff doesn't mean we're deprived of an opinion. The argument about abortion has always been one argument. Is it life or is it not life? That's it. We have all kinds of judgments on other things when it comes to life, murder, anything else. We're more than happy to pass laws against murder and blah, 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 blah. Most pro-lifers strongly believe it is an absolute life. And that's where the question comes in.
But
so
you have to look at science, though, because
but then you say the point of viability.
But the whole thing with, is it life at conception? There's no brain, there's no heart.
Agreed.
If somebody were to be in a car wreck and they were brain dead, they're considered dead. So how can you consider it a life at conception when there's no brain?
I'm not arguing that. What I am arguing is that there is a point of viability where that kid can absolutely survive. And really, at that point, what you're just arguing is a matter of science. As science gets better, as medical technology
if you look at it that way,
the point of viability keeps shrinking. So so it's shorter and shorter and shorter because they can keep babies alive that are born earlier and earlier and earlier. And
but
so
they can't. They still, in this day and age, cannot keep a baby alive if they're younger than 24 weeks in the womb.
I understand.
Because there's no lung function.
I'm with
What
I'm arguing is that that's a scientific advancement. So it's not a moral advancement. Do you know what I mean? So I think most of the people who argue on a moral basis of, this kid could survive, they could not. We don't know. In every other case, and this is what I do find fascinating, and I'm very pro-abortion. I'm a big fan of abortion, but I will throw out. I do get
the views and opinions given by the panel.
I do understand the other side that says,
I do, and
listen,
I don't.
if you feel like you're protected on life, there's no other case in this country, no other scenario where we say, not sure if it's a life or not. Let's err on the side of just say no. Let's just throw caution to the wind and say it's not a life. We don't do that. In every other case, we default to massive protection of a life that we think is in any way has some remote chance of staying alive. Always. This is the single incident where we don't do it. And so I do get the argument on the other side. Now, just for my own personal selfishness, thank God, that that's not the law of the land on abortion, but, I do find it hypocritical and in terms of a law that this is the one area where we just throw caution to the wind and say screw it. I just think that's a weird thing.
But I don't think you'll ever really there's always going to be the one side and the other side on the abortion issue.
Which
that will never, ever change.
Well, to me, that's why it should be legal. Because there's people that are for it and people that are against it. And if people that are against it don't want to do it, they don't have to. But you're basically telling people that are for it that they can never do it.
Yeah,
So
I think it's trying to settle an argument.
Now, I will tell you, I don't see a problem with making if you know who the father is, making them sign off that they're okay with you getting an abortion. I don't see why that can't happen.
But then that father
better
better support.
It's the opposite that worries me more than anything. Because when you want them to have an abortion and they say no, you're stuck. You're on the hook at that point.
Okay.
And you can't get out.
I think that
you can't get out of it.
we've kind of strayed from the executive order conversation and gone into full on solving the abortion issue.
Yeah, which I was actually about to jump in because we've got several more executive orders to get through. So, Ben?
Oh, I mean, I would just love to jump right into Steve Bannon.
Please.
Oh, yeah.
Please. That is on the list.
Oh,
and,
my God.
So, do you want to
expound
before? Okay, so let me read it again. Organization of the National Security Council and the Homeland Security Council elevating Trump's chief strategist Steve Bannon to full membership of the National Security Council and downgrades the roles of the Director of National Intelligence and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs to, and let me read this correctly, they shall attend where issues pertaining to their responsibilities and expertise are to be discussed. That disturbed me. Do you want to say why it disturbed you?
I can't think of one good reason why Steve Bannon should be put in that position or to strike the qualified individuals of those responsibilities, but let's just talk about Steve Bannon himself.
Yes.
Who was who overtook Breitbart and I think what else is on his resume? He was in the Navy for 7 years. Mm-hmm. He didn't attend Naval Academy or anything like that. He was just in the Navy.
Just in the Navy, right?
So his resume is shockingly sparse, and then we can get into a little more of his past. Where I was watching a video last night, where he was essentially calling for the revival of the Christian militant. So he's cool with religious wars. So there's that. He's does seem like an intelligent individual, but there's a lot of intelligent individuals out there that I think are crazy. And I'm gonna say it. Yeah, I think he's crazy. I don't think it's a great idea to have him in that position. And not only is it not a great idea, it's a bad idea.
Doesn't the president though? Whether we can look at any president, I believe, and we can look at some of the advisors of the president who's been around him or her eventually, and say, who is this person and why the hell are they there? But as president, you have the right to pit people around you that you think they gave you good advice, and that's their right.
They have some right. Congress actually
In
has
some
the
ways.
right to advise against it as well. So
We're not going to ever agree with any president of who they put around them.
My issue with Bannon. I have several issues with Bannon, but my biggest issue with Bannon is he's gone through or attempted to go through the confirmation process for other positions before, and the reason that they didn't let him through then is because he's a raving racist. And now, I unapologetically a raving racist, and so my issue with that in particular is, yes, I think it is every president's right to nominate whomever they want for whatever position they want to nominate them for, but
It isn't always the best decision.
yeah, I mean, from time to time, these are horrific decisions, and I haven't seen a president in modern history making some of the just asinine decisions for cabinet positions that I've seen this president making, and it's not because, okay, so there's been other presidents who've nominated whomever for whatever position, and I didn't particularly like the guy. I didn't like their politics, or.
But you weren't going to lose sleep over it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, Lord Cheney.
He was exceptionally qualified for that role.
Well,
Exceptionally qualified.
Now the problem is,
I didn't like Lord Cheney.
I didn't like Cheney at all.
Lord
I don't
Cheney.
like him either.
Just call him Lord Cheney.
Lord
Yeah,
Cheney.
yeah, I didn't like him at all.
That's funny.
But
He was put in place to run Bushy.
Oh, he was.
but
That was why he was there.
He was a big ghoulish.
but I will say
He was
this:
the controller.
there was only maybe one person under Bush, the guy who was running FEMA, that I just was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this guy is the most unqualified dude I've ever seen.
And didn't that happen?
Brown.
Yeah.
Wasn't that right before Katrina? Too?
Yeah. And I'm like,
He was head of FEMA when Katrina happened.
yeah. And then
People
it
misunderstand how FEMA works.
yeah.
So we got a bunch of formaldehyde trailers out there now, though. You know, you can go live in them. It's great.
What Mike Brown? What has to happen is the state has to request FEMA intervention.
They did.
They did not, and so that was
They did late. They did.
very late.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest problems, and this is a protection that has been in place forever, so that the federal government doesn't run ramshot over states' rights, and they did not request FEMA intervention.
So were they too busy like trying to survive?
Nobody thought
I
it was
mean-
No,
as
the
bad as it was.
governor should have requested FEMA intervention.
Absolutely.
And was it the female at
The
time?
mayor-
or was it
Was it
Jindal?
Jindal? I can't
No, it was
remember.
Jindal. It was
That was a multiple.
and Jindal just didn't request it
Multifaceted
until like
Started
2
with
weeks
the
later.
mayor,
It
went
was
to the
ridiculous.
governor, went to Brown.
That's-
That was a multiple failure.
Yeah, it was a
Because they
multiple failure.
should have had the buses hauling people out of there
Yeah.
instead they let the buses get flooded.
Yeah, but
and
yeah.
there was a multiple failure on every stage.
Yeah, so,
Which is
but,
just
but
stunning because I lived in the islands a long time,
yeah.
and you knew, everybody knew that if the major hurricane hit the place, this was going to flood. I mean, we get big thunderstorms. I
Yeah.
watched a Cadillac float down the street one day from my apartment. You know, we were up there partying our asses off, and there goes this Cadillac floating down the frickin' street.
Yeah.
And it's very slight hill there, but it's going down the street. And, you know, you're kind of going, you guys couldn't have figured this out a little bit better ahead of time, really? You didn't have that much of a plan?
Every president since Carter denied funding to rebuild the levees and enforce them and make them stronger. Like, that has been denied for 30 years prior to that happening, which was completely wrong in hindsight, and that falls on both parties.
Yeah.
So that is incredibly wrong. And the fact that, again, understanding the rules of the country, they have to by law, request FEMA intervention. That's the way that it works.
Yeah.
This is why you always see the governors requesting federal aid.
Yeah.
Then FEMA steps in. If you don't make the request, they cannot do anything by federal law.
But we're getting a little off track.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but like I say,
huge point.
You know, I could.
But it is a huge
we could
point.
definitely do a full podcast on Katrina and all of the ass fuckery therein. Hey, what's going on, podcasters? Let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party Podcast. The Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club, carrying on Kansas City's tradition of great food and great jazz, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery, whiskey, gin, vodka. That is, oh so good. And friend of the podcast and panelist, Lane Boland, managing to keep the podcast going. Apparently wealthy or not. Now onto our regularly scheduled program. But particularly right now, we're talking about Bannon. And like I said, my issue with Bannon is he's an unapologetic raving racist that has been turned down for a posting before for that reason.
Yeah.
So, yes, it is Trump's...
What is his unplot? Now, I don't know that much about Banner. I'll be the first one to admit.
Yeah, no, he's on tape saying ridiculous stuff. Just like are you sure you don't have a robe and a hood on?
He has very obvious ties to white nationalists and people who want to propagate Western European culture over other cultures, and it's pretty blatantly cultural.
And so
motivated.
Knowing that that's who he is, to now put him in charge of something that sweeping.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're like, here, man, take education.
Yeah,
no, it's not like that.
No. I mean, this is the National Security and Homeland Security Councils. This is
so he demoted real experts and 4-star generals and put him over them.
Yes,
for
which
7 years in the Navy.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to take seasoned generals and then say, no, you're not in charge. I'm going to put my homeboy bureaucrat, who's a raving racist, in charge of you.
And we'll call you in if we feel
if what we're talking about pertains to you, then we'll call you in the meeting.
I'm going to guess
that's a slap in the face in a special way.
I'm going to guess this is one that's not going to stick.
Yeah, once again,
you're talking about having the security people in their daily briefings or whatever?
No. We're saying that one of the executive orders that Trump signed was to put his chief strategist in charge of those two councils and demote the director of national intelligence and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs to work under him. Like you're one, unqualified for the position that he's appointing you to, and two, you're demoting highly qualified people to work under this super unqualified dude, just on qualifications. Then you add the layer of he's a raving racist who's been not only caught saying crazy racist stuff, but in pictures extra chummy with white nationalists. Yeah. So, and I'm like, and these are the people that you're choosing, which gets back to who are you surrounding yourself with, which also gets to the, why people are so up in arms. It's not just Trump. It's Trump and who you're surrounding yourself with.
Which is really, to me, a reflection of who you are.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I heard the best quote years ago. It was a quote from, of all people, Will Smith. He said, look at your 5 best friends. See them? Picture them in your mind. That's you. And if it's not you, you need to get new fucking friends quick. because
I'm pretty sure he didn't say new fucking friends quit.
no, I added the fucking friends. But
If your best friends are Tom Cruise and David Beckham, you got another issue.
oh, you got different issues, you know.
Well,
So-
you are the
Same
average.
thing.
Of five places.
exactly.
I've had friends of mine who are alcoholics.
Yeah. Well,
And
but
I've always
that's-
told you, if you quit drinking and quit going to the bar,
Yeah.
them guys showing up,
Yeah. No,
No, they're not showing up.
No, they're not showing up. You know. And
so who are your real friends?
But you have made strides in your life to better yourself, and your circle of friends is going to naturally change because of it.
Absolutely.
The problem is now we're seeing who his friends are, and the problem with who his friends are is they're either wildly incompetent, completely ass kissing, or wild racist, which says to me, you are one of, or a combination of,
Incompetent and
yeah,
racist?
yeah. You're one or you're either somebody who ass kisses their way up, you're incompetent or racist, or a combination of all three, because these are the people you're surrounding yourself with, and that's what I think people are really afraid of. I mean, when you look at DeVos to head education, she knows nothing about the public school system. She's never been in it. She doesn't have any of her children in it. And really the only reason why she was appointed in the first place is because her family has given upwards of $200 million to the Republican Party. And this is kind of a, hey,
Common politics.
and I'm not saying that it's not.
But one of his platform speeches was about how he wasn't going to do that, and he was going to get rid of it.
Yeah, he was
He's
going to
done nothing but
the
do
entire
that
drain
since
the
he-
swamp.
Yeah,
And now, but now
he's
you're
doing it worse than anybody I've ever seen. Well, I can't say that.
and this
Pretty
and this
bad.
really wasn't meant to be a bash Trump conversation. I really did want to examine the executive orders.
Well,
But go ahead.
one of my questions is going to be, is that, he's a week and a half, 2 weeks into this. What if in 2 years a lot of these people he's appointed, excluding Bannon, are doing well in their appointed positions?
I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible.
I think you have to turn around and say, these people have been successful in many ways. A lot of these appointments and cabinet appointments he's put in place, but they haven't done it in the bureaucratic sense.
Well, I'm not saying that it's not possible, but okay, let's say with what cabinet position is he putting up Rick Perry for?
Oh God!
For
Energy
what?
secretary.
Okay, for perfect example, energy secretary. The last two
Rick Perry.
appointees to run Department of Energy were like
MIT.
yeah, like MIT scientists, Nobel laureates, physicists in their fields. Down to Rick Perry
Who couldn't
Right,
even
but-
remember the name of the
of the department.
Who has no energy background.
But this is
And
the
at one
whole
point wanted to get rid of
mandate that Obama got was from the common peoples, that they didn't want the intellectual academics working government. So
Well,
he's only doing what he said he would do in that.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
Right or
that.
wrong,
I'm not
that's
saying
what
that
he's saying.
he's not doing what he feels his mandate is. But
I'm sure there are other people that are more qualified.
I will
Well,
throw out the
I-
cautionary
you know what?
note as we've already been down this path in all of our lifetimes. If you want to remember, Carter came in
Yeah.
and chose nobody who was an insider, and it ended up being one of the worst presidencies in the history of the United States. At some point, you need qualified people who understand government, who knows how it works, who can foster compromise, who can get bills through, make things happen. And for the exact same reasons I think Carter failed, I think Trump is about to fail miserably.
He may.
Just being an outsider doesn't make you good at government. Government is its own art form, and you need to have people who are experienced in government in there. They're not all morons. Most of them are there for a good reason. and want to try to actually help and do things.
I'll give myself as an example of this thing. I was asked to be on the education committee for Johnson County contractor licensing, a very small thing. It's just a small point. And I get in there, I don't know nothing about this type of government committee. I don't know how to think about it. I don't understand how the wheels move slowly and analytically in a government type situation, and how they stop and look at things and evaluate it from a lot of different points of view. For me, I'm sitting there going, I got the information, let's do it. Well, it doesn't work that way. So I got schooled, and I got better and better at it. I got good enough that they decided they wanted to appoint me to, which the county commissioners have to appoint me to the board. Now I'm on the board. I understand quite well how the process works now. I'm able to work the system, but I had to go and learn as an outsider the bureaucratic system of how the wheels turn and how you present yourself and how you talk.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that is.
It's a very small micronism.
Well, but I don't disagree that that's possible. I think the problem is, so you take the entire cabinet and you get rid of any tenure. Who's teaching? There's got to be somebody who understands this process in the cabinet. And right now, what we're seeing is that every single person that he's appointing has no idea how this process goes. And I think it's going to be just like what the Tea Party figured out kind of quickly and violently, is that government does not work like that. I know that everybody who comes into government is idealistic and wants to do things and change things and move things forward in a progressive way. And I understand that. But if there's, if everybody's a student, that's where, just like when we were in grammar school or high school, if the teacher leaves the class, the students just start acting a fool. They start talking, they start throwing shit, they start pinching girls. It's just ridiculous stuff starts happening because nobody's in control. So the president doesn't know anything because he's never been in government. His cabinet doesn't know anything because either they've never been in government or nothing on this scale. So who's the teacher? That's the problem.
But you do have, I think you do have people in government that is the teacher. I spent last Wednesday in the state capital of Kansas because they're talking about taxing our labor in Kansas, because Kansas has a severe budget problem due to the fact that their governor went Tea Party stupid and started cutting too many things. And what Brownback did just plain old doesn't work. Sure. I mean, it's just a reality. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the Trump government is in the same type of problem.
Well, and then
maybe they're going to go a little too stupid.
Wasn't Trump eyeing Brownback for council position?
Right. So you have to understand these things. Now they have to find money. So now they're going to go after certain things that they shouldn't be going after. So we went and put a strong force, and I talked to the leader of the House of Representatives, and we went and talked to our senators, and we talked to our representatives and said, understand what the ramifications of this is. This is a bad idea. We already have 65% of your tax bases on materials that are going into our houses. And then today I get an email. We charge about $275 for renewal for our Johnson County contractor licensing. Okay, that pays for our program, which is a nationally recognized best program, our seminars, to get education to our contractors, so you have an educated contractor working in your house or working on your new house. And now they're trying to say that, well, that has to be limited at $25. You just killed everything. And this is a bill that's going to committee. So here we are, we're active again. We're after these things. Yeah. These are the things that I've learned. Yeah. That there's ways to do it. And now I'm head of the Government Affairs Committee for the Home Builders Association in Kansas City now. You have to learn how to play the game, and it takes time to learn how to
I
play
think
the
we're
game.
missing a piece, though. I mean, in order to learn, you have to be willing to say, "I don't know," or to say,
Yes.
"You know what? Maybe I am wrong. Let's talk this through." You have to be willing to do that. And there has not been one point that Trump has shown that he is willing to do.
Trump can't do that.
Honestly,
He
that,
can't do
that
it.
was.
Well, but that in
It would
itself, I
have
think
to
is
be
a problem.
it's going to have to be beat into him.
I think
and he's
that-
going to have
yeah.
failures
I
to
don't-
learn
Who's
from.
going to
I
beat
don't
it
foresee
into
that
it?
quality
He's now the
in-
president of the United States.
Well, I mean, it would
All he
honestly
has
have to be
do is
his.
fire somebody that doesn't agree with him.
No, I don't think a lot of the Republicans will even tolerate this. You're seeing McCain and a lot of other Republican senators saying, dude, if you even try to relax the sanctions on Russia, we will codify them
Which
into law.
that makes me want.
Yeah,
Like, I have a
so
quick comment on
it's
because
interesting.
We haven't heard really much of anything from Pence in a while. Like, it's kind of like, I wonder what this guy's doing.
Well, you
And
really
I feel like he's
haven't
just
heard
kind
a
of
lot
sitting in the
from
back
Paul
waiting.
Ryan, or I mean,
Well, right. But I
Any
feel
of
like, I
them.
mean,
Nobody likes him. He wants to
That's
be
the way it went to school.
I think that if Trump gets caught in some sort of impeachment and everything, he's just waiting so he doesn't get caught in it, so he can. I mean, right? He's next
Which is
up.
just
I
as
I mean,
bad.
he is next up. man.
Honestly,
Not a
You
bad
have to
point.
wonder.
Not
I
a
think
bad
he's
point.
counting on Pence to handle negotiations with Congress because he's dealing with experience in Congress and that cabinet right now, and he's trying to make that work. And I think Pence,
So maybe that's it.
Pence
I
will
was
be
just-
behind the scenes, doing the negotiations and things like that, and trying to find the way to make these idiotic statements in the law, or at least find a compromise for them. I think the vast majority of these things are literally never going to see the light of day, and beyond that, they're just going to be overturned. So, and they'll never hold up. And I think it's just saying, "See, I told you I did everything I said I was going to do, and that's all." So.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move forward
I
to.
got one more that this is an executive order that Trump signed that nobody knows about.
Okay.
Okay, I got this in one of the little emails I get. Driving slowly in the left lane and blocking other people from passing is a crime punishable by death. Sad.
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 Good. That's what I can
Now,
find.
nobody knew about that one, so, you know,
Does that include not using your blinker?
move over and get the hell out of my way because you could die from it now. It's a serious issue, okay?
So, yeah.
All right, so we've got one more thing that I want to touch on, and we are definitely running a little long, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we would be remiss if we did not mention all of the protests at all of the international airports this weekend because of one of his executive orders that, as he says, to go forward with the extreme vetting process.
Of Muslims only.
Well, and that's
And let's be honest.
that's the and they and
God, it's
I think
just
his
so dumb.
I think his administration has gone out of its way to say that it's not,
Yeah, of course they have.
but
But he put a list of 7 countries where we won't take you from, and they all happen to be Muslim countries.
all happen in Muslim countries.
Well, and then
It's
saying
an
that he would
accident.
try to get Christian people through.
Right.
Yeah, could
Exactly.
through quicker, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because we don't have any problem with Christians in this country.
Just yeah, exactly.
So, and
Right,
you know, once again, you know, it's one of those things that I almost understand where you feel like you were coming from, but illegal and unconstitutional, just to just put it bluntly. And I assume that well, there's actually already been legal action staying this particular executive order, but you know the chaos that it created in literally just a couple of days.
Yeah.
You know,
Did you see all the photos? It was actually really cool to see all the photos of the attorneys that just would gather and show up and
Yeah,
pull up chairs,
Yeah.
sit in McDonald's, and they would
Just-
say, "Oh, pull up signs saying we're attorney, come talk to us."
yeah, just
we're gonna help you.
just helping people do
That's-
writs of habeas corpus, and it's kind of it was kind of encouraging to see man helping man in that way. But
If you have a green card and you have a residence card You have every right to be here. Now, the one thing that they do need to guard against, and it's part of the vetting that needs to happen, is that somebody's been here for a long time, and just like the San Bernardino shooters, and then they go back to Saudi Arabia, came back with the crazy chick,
Right.
and boom, there they go. They got radicalized.
Well,
The one-
then why isn't Saudi Arabia on the list of countries that we need
Well,
to
and I
possibly...
think that's
Why, Ben?
That's-
Tell us
Well,
why.
that's pretty off. That's politics.
but that and in lies the problem. You know,
but there is
because there's 7 countries on that list, and there's at least 7 other countries where we have known or caught terrorists from those countries. So Saudi, Pakistan.
Well, actually,
you
the
know.
overwhelming majority of
Yeah.
the ones that have caused problems in the United States have
They
not come from
said-
7 countries
But-
that have been banned.
They said 16 of the 18
Truly.
terrorists from 9/11 were from the countries that are not on the banned list.
true.
16 of the 18.
True.
Now here's the other problem that I found kind of looking this up. Several of the countries not on the banned list
All of them.
have
All 4 of them.
Trump has business ties in those
Or
countries.
hotels.
Yeah, and that is so. Yes, the security of America and Americans is tantamount. I will say that. But if we're going to do something this dramatic, then and then let's call a spade a spade. We are holding up people from Muslim countries before they can enter, and then let's do all Muslim countries if that's what the case is. You know, but to kind of randomly pick.
Unconstitutional.
Did you guys talk about
Not that I think that's
Yeah,
right
yeah,
either.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure,
that
sure,
Iran is filing for reciprocity because of this ban?
Oh, to ban Americans, from
Well-
coming on their soil.
And then there's the argument that a lot of people I had this discussion with online was that Obama did the same thing in 2011. And
That's mostly
we've
false.
gone through the entire list of reasons why it's, not even close.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you follow PolitiFact?
I mean,
Go ahead.
from time to time I come across them, yes.
Yeah, they
I would not
they
want to travel
researched
to
that
Iran.
one. and
Did the
it was false.
Yeah, just throwing that out. Yeah,
They're not the only ones who.
No,
who
it was
did
on
that.
it was
it's all
on
over the
Good
place.
Morning America this morning. They were talking
Yeah.
about
Oh,
it.
good, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's something interesting about Mr. Carter, and of course, we've already talked about some of his failures. Now, I'm older, so I remember this very well, and my wife's cousin Craig was actually a pilot that was on a mission to go rescue the hostages when the helicopters crashed in the desert because they weren't prepared correctly. They also, according to what Craig said, they had every Army, the Navy, and everybody had Air Force, everybody had to be involved with it. When it should have just been one group to go in there to get it done. So everybody had to add their finger in it. But during the hostage crisis, Jimmy Carter banned Iranians and Shiite Muslims from entering the U.S., had the FBI reevaluate those within our borders, and then deported Shiite and Iranian students. Now, when I was in college for the short period of time I was, a lot of them students, the Iranians were not, they were difficult to deal with, all right, in our schools. And they were difficult with our women, and the women stayed away from them for the most part. This has happened before.
But I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't make it right either time. I don't think Carter was right.
Yeah, we
But
can't.
do we? But once again, the governor of Virginia, was it McCulloch or something like that, stated that it's a right. And I had a problem with this. It's a right for anybody to come into our country. No, it's not a right. It's a privilege to come to America.
Well,
It
I
is
think-
not a right,
I
and that's what I've heard a lot of today. Is that, and listen to MSNBC, I listen to a lot of different things, that there's people out there saying it's a right for these people to come here. No, it's not.
Now, I do agree that it's a privilege and not necessarily a right, but here's...
But that's saying the wrong thing, Rio.
No, I understand what you're saying.
These guys are saying the wrong thing. A lot of the protesters are saying the wrong thing. Their heart's in the right place, but they aren't going about it in the right direction of really saying what it truly is. And they have detained people and they've let people on in. And I think they overreached.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive overreach. But
then they step back, and this is Trump. Trump's going to throw the bomb and let the bomb blow up. And once it blows up, and he sees, well, there's too much stuff going on here. I got too many mass casualties. I need to pull this back. And they've done this time and time again with their executive orders.
Well, and which I guess
there's some good to come out of them, is what I'm trying to say. But it's how they go about them that really irritates people.
And that's the problem.
That's what's freaking everybody out.
It's not the fact that you want to vet anybody coming into the country, because yes, it is a privilege to come here, live here, be here, become an American.
They didn't explain what they were trying to do. They didn't. It was like he signed the order and mass chaos happened.
Yeah.
There was no, we're going to be signing this order. This is what you should expect. Blah blah blah.
But there's an explanation behind this too.
Poor execution.
And when you think about it, it makes a little bit of sense. And I'm not totally sensible with it. Is that I'm not going to let anybody know what I'm doing, because we may have a surge of people trying to come in there real quick. I'm not going to let them know
But there's no real
ahead of
quick
time.
to get in the country
They're going to do it, and boom, it's there.
Yeah,
there is no real quick to getting into the country.
Not to mention,
there is a very solid vetting process.
I've passed in and out of this country many times.
But you are also an American citizen.
Yes, but I also didn't get in. I didn't walk right in any time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
in fact, on the Canadian border, I got detained for over an hour.
But you're just proving the point.
Yes, my point. That's my point.
So with this executive order,
I'm not disagreeing.
So people from these countries who have green cards and residencies and all that stuff, and they're being held and not being able to go to their homes for 90 days.
No, that's not.
That's what they tried to do, but
it's not happening in that aspect.
Well, good.
These people are getting processed, and they're letting them. Most of them are getting let on in.
I will say
there's really only
But
hundreds
that's
of them.
not how
There's only
it
hundreds of them
started.
right now that are in this process.
I'll say this, and like I say, because we're a little over time, so I want to make sure that I get this point in before we go to something on a lighter note. Mm-hmm. Give me your huddled, tired masses. Yearning to breathe free. That is engraved on the Statue of Liberty. Mm-hmm. Do we mean that? And I don't even want an answer to that question. This is just something I'm posing. I want everybody out there in podcast land to think about it. Do we mean that, or do we mean as long as everything is good, then give me those people? But if it gets a little difficult, then I don't want those tired huddled masses. I don't want that, And I'm going to say, because that was the founding of our nation, was on that principle that are we still America, and are we wanting to live up to those values? So like I say, I actually don't want to answer that question, but I want to pose it because I think that's the ultimate question to be wrestled with for all of us. But on a lighter note, before I wrap things up, Serena Williams wins her 23rd Grand Slam title. Defeating.
How cool is that?
I know. I was thinking
Bravo.
23rd Grand Slam title
against her sister.
Yeah, against her sister.
14 years. This Australian Open, we solidified
that is way cool.
Two goats.
Yeah.
Greatest
Yes.
of all time. Serena Williams, phenomenal. And Roger Federer.
And Roger Federer.
Taking Rafael Nadal, the classic
Who
matchup in
had
the fifth
been
set.
out
Yeah.
for a long time. He's
Yeah,
35 years old now.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
Federer just turned.
And the fact that it was
Nadal just
Serena
turned
and
30 or
Venus.
29.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just like
wow.
Yeah, like you say, we have cemented two goats for tennis.
Oh, I gotta say, old people rule.
And with that note, out there in podcast land, I'm going to end this podcast in the way that I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that started it all for me, and that is to good times with good people.